Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest installment of the Football Experience, brought to you by On the Pod. I'm Caleb. He's Nev. I'm not going to start with the normal question of how you're doing because I'm pretty sure I know the answer after last night for you. So I'm going to ask maybe a question that might take your mind off the occurrences of last night just for a little bit. What do you think there's more of in the world, wheels or doors?
Is that meant to be like a sort of like metaphorical question as well? Because or like
I
one of
don't know
those
how I
but
don't
you
know how
know
metaphorical it is, but I'm just what do you think there's more of, wheels or doors? You know?
yeah, but you know how they say that like a door is an opportunity as well. So from that point of view, there's endless opportunities in the world. Or are you talking like actual physical doors?
Man, that Arsenal game's got you thinking philosophical. I was just thinking physical, man.
All right, you're not going into that whole realm of that whole
No,
philosophical
man,
realm and all that stuff.
you're in your you're in your feels after last night, man.
Yeah, I'm not quite feeling it today. But I'm just trying to give it a think because like there's a door to the entrance of the apartment. There's a door to the kitchen, like an actual door. There's a door to the
Cabinets.
yeah, if you want to consider them doors too.
Well, they are. They open to another thing.
Yeah, but this is where we also get into what type of doors as well. Like, are we talking doors that you can only walk through?
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
That would be an interest, or like your physical being can go through.
Yeah, exactly. And I think like in my apartment, which is a really small apartment, there's only like I think there's like 5 doors, including the front door. So that's already more than one car.
And here's the thing about cars. Cars have four wheels, but
And
most of them also have four doors.
even 5 doors if it's a hatchback.
I'm not going to count the boot.
Nah. Yeah, but you can physically enter through it.
Oh, see, it's just too tricky now, isn't it?
I'm gonna go
When you think
for.
of
I'm going for doors though.
ooh, you're locking in doors.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think because of that car fact. I didn't think of the car fact when I first was posed with the question, but then realizing that most cars have as many doors as they do wheels, I think that tipped it into doors for me as well.
Yeah, but then you can also throw into there like you just said wheels. You didn't say car wheels. So like, what about motorbikes?
No, exactly.
What about trolleys?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Skateboards, scooters, all of that stuff.
Quad bikes
Pallet
and
jacks,
and quad bikes don't have
quad
doors.
bikes. Yeah, no doors. It's a tricky one. It will be really close.
I wonder if there's a stat out there like on that fact.
I highly doubt it. Oh, well, I think now that we kicked off, I got a little chuckle out of you, but it's time to bring you right back down to earth. And my first take, and I'll go into it a little bit later on what's happened, is that what happened at St James's Park on the Monday night was a potentially seismic day for the near future of the Premier League. That's my initial feeling on what happened last night. But I'm going to give you your AFTV sort of moment. I don't know if there'll be a rant, but I'm very interested to get the Arsenal supporters' perspective on what you saw or just what your take is from the game.
Well, just quickly on I guess your point, like I guess the repercussions going into even probably the next 2 years. Especially if this leads us to not being able to get Champions League football next season either. I heard a rumor, and it was apparently like a very solid rumor or leak that Arsenal were like the leading front runners to get Pablo Dybala, but he said that he will only join if there's Champions League football, and that's just one player that we're now most likely not going to sign, or we sign him but we have to up the wage bill by maybe 50,000 a week or even 100,000 a week. just so he signs. So you either sign because there's Champions League football, or you sign because the wage bill is huge. So, yeah, that's a player that we're missing out on potentially just because of this game. Well, you can't even say this game, because I can lead to other games throughout the season that we should have won, like Man United at Old Trafford. We were in the box seat to win that, and we should have won that. Everton at Goodison as well, we should have won that. So like those are two games that we should have picked up points in, but we didn't even pick up 1 point in. But yeah, on to last night's game though. It just seemed like Newcastle had a much better game plan, and they were much more up for it than what Arsenal was. And if you sort of compare, go back to where we lost the 3 games in a row to Crystal Palace, Southampton, and what was the other one? Brighton. But then we bounced back against Chelsea, United, West Ham, and we also had, I think, Leeds. We beat Leeds as well. But like we bounced back, so we managed to motivate ourselves after 3 losses. Why couldn't we then motivate ourselves after a loss to Tottenham when we're still 1 point ahead of them and knowing exactly what we have to do? But we approached the game more, from my perspective, more from an attitude of what can we do not to lose rather than what can we do to win. It was a very timid attitude and approach to the game. And our defense from pretty much from minute 1 was under pressure the whole time. Our midfield was on. They weren't on the front foot like the Newcastle midfield. Every time the ball would be played out from our defense into our midfield, it was all like if our midfield managed to get a first touch, a Newcastle player was right there on that second touch that they were about to take, putting pressure on them, winning the ball back. Or they were actually intercepting and winning it before it came to our midfield player. So this game sort of highlighted that we need, firstly, that we're missing Partey, and that we need more reinforcements in midfield. That El Neni and Xhaka aren't necessarily there. Even Odegaard, but I'll give him the benefit of the doubt because he's only like 21, 22. He was nowhere to be found yesterday. And I'll also point out that I think that last summer we were trying to sign Guimaraes, and I think we didn't want to come up like with an extra. I can't remember how the asking price was around 40 or 50 million. It might have been 50 million in summer, but Newcastle signed him for I think 40 now in winter. So we were interested in the player that they ended up signing, and he was fantastic last night. And it goes to show that, what happens when you're stingy, I guess, or too stingy in the transfer market. Because we did sign Partey for 45 mil. So why couldn't we then sign Guimaraes for 40 mil? So it was a disappointing result, obviously. Losing Tomiyasu, I think it was towards the end of the first half that he came off. So he's going to be out for the last game of the season. But yeah, also not reinforcing our backline in January, considering we knew Tomiyasu was I think he came off just after that City game. He was injured, so we didn't sign any proper replacement. Cedric has done okay in certain games, but he got exposed yesterday again by pushing up too high. He got exposed in the Tottenham game as well. So it was it seems like it's a lack of reinforcements in January that is now coming to bite Arteta on the arse, because Conte got his two players in January. He got Kulusevski and who's the other one? Yeah, Bentancur. So it's showing the squad depth is now, and the squad depth and the lack of experience is starting to show now. in the most crucial time in the season.
Yeah, so a few things to unpack. The first thing, the Paulo Dybala point. That is dodging a bullet for me and I don't know how true stories about Paulo Dybala being linked with clubs are at the moment because he's not re-signing with Juve, and I think he wants more money from Juve. So for him, like we saw with Pogba and City, for him and his representatives to float out stories linking him to clubs is obviously a beneficial tactic for him at this time to try and get the most money out of whatever the next club he goes to. But he's Paulo Dybala by name only at this stage. He doesn't even start for Juve. I mean, every time I watch Juve this season, I'd always be shocked to see that he wouldn't even be in the starting 11. And the thing is, that Juve starting 11 isn't very good. So for him to not get in there and want astronomical wages, I think is a little bit ridiculous. So if I could give you a silver lining, that might be it. If there was any truth to that rumor, because I think that would have been a really bad signing, sort of Özil-like, if you will. To go into the game before I give the bigger picture, and I guess I'll start with a little bit of Arsenal's deficiencies, as you were pointing out, which probably lead into what Newcastle did well as well. In the game, I think, and you'll see this in games, if a team just can't get a foothold into a game, often I will say that they've lost the engine room battle, and that's the centre of midfield. And I look at the three Newcastle central midfielders up against the three Arsenal central midfielders. Granted, Thomas Partey wasn't in this Arsenal midfield, but that Newcastle midfield is just better for me. I mean, the player that Joelinton's become in central midfield is nothing short of remarkable, the transformation he's undertaken. Sean Longstaff's been a pretty good player for a while. I think he's had injuries last couple of seasons, but I know a couple of seasons ago when he broke out, there was some rumours about him going to Man United for like 35 mil or something like that. So while I don't think he's quite there, he needs to do it for more seasons. He's a physical, robust midfielder, very functional. And then, as you say, the jewel in the crown is Bruno Gemara, who is just a fantastic player. And he's really announcing himself on the Premier League stage. It's interesting because he plays as sort of like, he plays in the middle of the three. So you could say he's the six, but obviously the fact that he scores another goal, which he's been doing fairly regularly from midfield, popping up in the box, suggests that he doesn't play a normal six. They almost just take it in turns and rotate between all three of them. And normally, like you look at a Liverpool, Fabinho will stay as the six. He won't go and venture off into 8 or 10 territory. He stays as the six. And then the other two move more around him. But in this Newcastle one, it's much more fluid. And I just thought Arsenal, that is the main. I thought they lost, and I think they said it after the game. A few players came out. I think Bukayo Saka came out and said we lost all our individual battles across the park. And they really did. And yeah, especially in that engine room where I thought they were just outclassed, mainly by Gamiris, but then outworked by the two Newcastle central midfielders in Joelinton and Longstaff. The point on motivation, I don't understand it because you know that this is, and I want to touch on this in the bigger picture, but you know this is Newcastle's last game at home after a recent upturn that's seen them very comfortably be safe from relegation this season. So they're going to want to celebrate that. The crowd definitely wanted to celebrate that. And more importantly, for the journey Newcastle are going to take, they wanted a scalp. And they finally got one right at this late stage of the season that, honestly, the scenes you saw at St. James's Park, that could carry a lot of momentum forward. And that's a part I want to hit on in the bigger picture. You're talking about the fact that Arsenal could have signed Guimaraes as well. Well, and you said they spent that money on Partey as well. Well, let's not forget they spent 50 million on White. What was it, 35 on Ramsdale, and then a few seasons ago, obviously 70 mil on Pepe. So for us to sit here and say Arsenal are huge underdogs for what they want to achieve, while I can understand that because the squad maybe hasn't, or those signings haven't performed in the manner you want them to in terms of Pepe and obviously Aubameyang being moved on. But at the same time, this is a club that has spent money. Like, we can't avoid that fact. So to say fifth is a great achievement and it's above where we expected them to be, I don't think that's quite fair, because I think they should be finishing fifth or sixth. But even if it's six, having a real challenge at that top four this season, which they've done, I'm not taking that away from them. I think they've met what the target should have been. Because let's not forget, Arteta had all of last season as well as having half or over of the season before. So it's not like he hasn't had time in the job as well. So I think it's around fair. If this is how it is to finish, and I'm not even going to say that this is how it's going to finish. Although losing the game is a real killer for Arsenal. Even if they could scrape out a draw and find a way not to lose this game, at least then on the last day, Tottenham, if they draw, you can still get that fourth spot. Now, if they draw, they'll clinch it because the goal difference is so superior. So now Tottenham must lose the game, which I think going to Norwich is it's going to be more difficult for them to lose the game than it is for them to win the game. I'll put it that way. So not being able to even take a point is massive there. But the bigger picture point I wanted to touch on, and it sort of came from the vibes I got from St. James's Park initially, and then obviously the way the game panned out. Arsenal, with this loss, could potentially, like you say, have set themselves back a long time. And in the same breath, the side effect is, okay, Chelsea guarantee their place in next season's Champions League because of this loss to Arsenal. We think that they would have got in anyway, so that's not a huge shock there. But now Tottenham look odds on to get in. That means that Conte and Kane and Son are very likely to stay playing Champions League football next season altogether. That means Tottenham will undoubtedly be stronger next season if Antonio Conte is the manager over the summer period, the transfer period. If he can attract players to fit that system that he has, and then he's got two world-class attacking players in there, they could mount a title challenge if they get the right players in. Because I don't fully expect City and Liverpool to keep up this pace next season. I expect more challenges to come. Obviously, I touch on Chelsea. Chelsea being in the Champions League now, their signings, they can sign players. If Tuchel stays as well, they can get stronger. And Newcastle getting this scalp. Newcastle, with the money that's come in, obviously, big thing. But the fact that Newcastle it kind of reminds me of Anfield in the fact that the stadium and the team, when they're playing well, is almost like a battery for the entire city. It just charges up the whole place when a team can perform, because the whole city, I know Liverpool, you've got Everton, and they're a big club in their own right as well. Newcastle, you only have Newcastle. So when Newcastle are doing well and St. James's Park is rocking like it was last night, that is a huge effect. And we've seen what the right recruitment, what the right manager, and I'm not saying Eddie Howe is or isn't the right manager yet. I'm not 100% there, but I think he's taken a giant step towards it with this end of season performance. But we've seen with Liverpool what Jurgen Klopp and the right recruitment can do in a city like that lives for their team. I just think this could be the start of a quicker than expected, but a pretty special journey for Newcastle. If the recruitment keeps going well and the fans stay on side, I think that team could be challenging for top four, if not next season, the season after that. And honestly, that's another team that Arsenal are going to have to preoccupy themselves with and try and get past. And I don't know, at this stage, if they can't find a way to get into that top four this season, although I didn't expect them to be top four, that could be a huge setback for their future aspirations.
I think what you pointed out is valid points, especially like towards the end where you mentioned how Newcastle looked to be kicking on, and my thoughts were that next season their objective will be to challenge for Europe, and they could very well get it considering they have the financial resources to attract pretty much any player. And their recruitment in January actually helped them stay up, because we were talking about Newcastle possibly getting relegated back in January. Like they were relegation candidates. I think they had only picked up was it like 15 points from the first like 18 games or something like that, like something ridiculous. And yeah, like this game it seems like it's gonna have like a ripple effect going on into next season, not just the end of this season. So definitely a disappointing result from an Arsenal perspective. From Newcastle perspective, it probably will help them kick on. And yeah, from Tottenham perspective, they're, like you said, they're probably going to hold on to Kane and Son. And to just think about the fact that Newcastle signed Grealish over Kane. They chose to sign Grealish over Kane.
City, you mean?
Yeah, I said City.
You said Newcastle, City, yeah.
Yeah, like City. So City went over with Grealish. Had they went for Kane, the title probably would have been wrapped up, because who gets the 3 goals against City in that second game? Top 4 probably would have been wrapped up, because Kane's the one that's, I guess, orchestrating that. I guess that's sort of like not just the front third, but also a little bit of that midfield third as well. He's orchestrating in that sort of area. That's huge that Tottenham actually ended up holding on to him.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good what if. Just on that point though, there's an interesting thing, sort of consensus amongst a lot of pundits on sort of pods that I listen to or shows that I watch. And that consensus is, and I think I agree with it, that City bringing in, either had it been Kane last season in the transfer window or Haaland as it is now, I don't think that makes their league performance really change all that much. I mean, they should finish on, 93 points this season should they win their last game. 93 points, how much better can it really get than 93 points? I know they hit 100 a couple of seasons ago, but I can't see it just getting that much better. And point taken that if you weaken your rival like you do with Kane and Tottenham, then they can't come to the Etihad and do what they did. That's a good point in itself. But the change that having a striker like that makes is in the big games like your Real Madrid first leg, where you need someone to put away more than the 4 chances that they put away, because they could have scored more. Like you said, I think at the time, 10 or so. They have a striker who turns up to those big moments, or even takes a chance at the Bernabeu, one of those ones at the end of the game. Then all of a sudden they're into the Champions League final. And that's the fine margins that having a striker like that, I think, will change. But in terms of league performance, I don't know how much better it can get for a Manchester City or a Liverpool at the moment. So I think it's more a signing for those key moments in a season, which no doubt it'll be interesting to watch Haaland at City next season.
Yeah, so I guess with those key moments that you mentioned, like Kane would have put away some of those chances, and I guess, yeah, he wouldn't have, like we touched on, he wouldn't have scored the 3 at the Etihad. He would have scored 3 for City at Etihad probably. And like, how much better can it get? They could have been Centurions again, because those games where they needed a striker, like for instance the Crystal Palace draw as well. Like, didn't they? I think they created like 20 chances apparently or something like that, but they just couldn't put the ball back in the net. So like, there's those couple of games, like those 2 or 3 games in the league where it would have wrapped up the title earlier rather than coming down to the final day. Even this, and we'll touch on the game against West Ham. Even against West Ham, not just having a finisher, but Kane is also a facilitator as well. So he would fit in. I feel like he would fit into Guardiola's system more so than Haaland, who seems like he's just a pure finisher. They would have been able to open up teams a lot more, I feel, and it would have been easier for them to win the league. And like you mentioned, the key moments in Real, like having a Kane there instead of a Grealish, it probably would have got them over the line. And having someone like that, it doesn't like just suddenly make a team like 2 or 3 times better. It makes them 1% or 2% better, and we're playing on those kind of fine margins where 1 or 2% better is what wins you titles. Like, but then if you go lower down the league, then yeah, like a Newcastle needs to be 2 times better to actually challenge, and Arsenal needs to be 2 times better to challenge as well. But when you're talking about Liverpool and City, they just need that 1% difference to turn the tide. Because like Liverpool and City, both their games they drew 2-2 against each other, home and away in the league. And having that player, that special player that can, I guess, finish those fine margins, that's what wraps up leagues and brings you titles.
Yeah, the fine margins. I totally agree with. The player like that is kind of built for. Before we move away from it, I know you want to move from the game. I got to ask the question now. With things looking a little clearer, like I said, though, I'm not completely ruling out that Tottenham could shit the bed on the last day of the season. And even if they did that, I'm not even ruling out that Arsenal will win their game against Everton. So anything could happen on this last day, really, except I still think the title's gone, despite the City result that we're going to touch on later. But like I say, before moving away from it, I got to ask you, next season, who do you think finishes higher, Arsenal or Newcastle? Should Arsenal not finish in the top 4?
I think we should still finish higher next season. I think Newcastle they still need not just this summer transfer window, but they need one more, because they still don't have Champions League football or even European football, and they need to play that sort of fine line between what PSG do, but PSG are obviously in a league where they're pretty much dominated by themselves, but like attracting players not just for the right transfer fee, but also for the right wages. Because if they just start writing blank checks to agents and clubs, you're going to see them paying 100 mil for a player that you should only be paying 60 mil for, or 40 mil for, or something. They're going to be paying 2 times or 3 times extra, and it's not going to guarantee them any success. And they're also going to be paying, instead of paying £100,000 per week for a player, like their wages, they're going to be paying 150 or 200 or 250. So they need to skate along that fine margin of not being taken advantage of and recruiting correctly. So far, I think for the players that they brought in, it looks like their recruitment is aware of that, and then not currently being taken advantage of. Because like they could have just because they were in such a precarious position in January, they could have just went out and signed any player. Like they could have they could have probably went to PSG and said, we'll give you 500 million for him. We know that he's 6 months left on his contract. We'll give you 500 million for him, and here Mbappe have $1 million per week. They literally could have went and done that.
Well, PSG are already doing that, reportedly.
Yeah. But they could have they literally have it in their arsenal to go and do that, to offer an absurd amount for any player and then offer them absurd wages. They have it. They have the bank for it, essentially. But they didn't go out and do that. They went and recruited pretty smartly, and they did a very good job with their recruitment, and also bringing in Eddie Howe. So I still think that they're next season. I think they're going to try and challenge for Europe. So they're going to be in or around that 6th, 7th, 8th. I know 8th doesn't get you Europe, but they're going to be around there. But I think that they might fall short just because they might not have the personnel to get them there. But next summer transfer window, so 2024, I think that's when they'll go, okay, we need to. That's when the objective will be. We need to secure Europe and then challenge for Champions League. I think that's when the objective will be changed to that. So next season will be challenge. The next season after that will be secure Europe, challenge for the Champions League. Similar to Arsenal this season, I think the objective was always secure Europe, challenge for the top four. I think that was always the objective for, going into the season.
Yeah, and I agree with that, and I agree with that timeline that you put on Newcastle's. If I had to answer the question, I don't think Newcastle will finish above Arsenal next season, but I think there's a case to be made because for two reasons, and it's so much based on this game that we've just had. I think it could really prove to be that pivotal. The fact that Newcastle were able to build this kind of momentum late season with the result against a big team who were playing for something at this stage, the way the city is galvanized as well, because in my time of intently watching football, I don't think I've ever seen Newcastle fans unanimously behind the team like this. I haven't seen it, to be quite honest. So to see that is kind of a powerful image and an ominous one for other clubs. And the other point that you were talking about, and I'm glad that you touched upon it, was the recruitment. Because if we look at their signings, I don't think they're going to necessarily go the Man City Robinho route this summer. I don't think they're going to try and just get a marquee name just to signify for the rest of the players out there. I don't think they'll go that way. They might spend a lot on good players. But if you look at the recruitment, bringing in Chris Wood, obviously Bruno Gemara, and that's the marquee signing. That's the big one. But then the other astute pieces of business were Matt Targett at left back. Kieran Trippier was another big piece of business from Atletico. And I just looked up his wages while you're talking as well, and just to use him as sort of a gauge. And look, I won't say only, but he's on £100,000 a week, which I mean is maybe a slight overpay, but at the same time, this guy at the time was still an England international. It'll be interesting to see if he gets in the squad for the World Cup, but £100,000 isn't really breaking the bank, especially for Newcastle, but it's not like your Man United wages where you're looking at a Rashford on £250,000 a week and you're like, why the hell is he on so much? It's not like now they've set this example that we're going to give a player like Kieran Trippier £200,000 a week. So I think the way they're doing it, they don't want to set that kind of example. They want to get your Dan Burns in. They want to get your Kieran Trippiers, your Matt Targetts, and your Chris Woods. And why they want to do that as well is to obviously weaken the other teams around them in their positions. So I think what you might see from them in terms of recruitment this summer will be, can we make the best Premier League 11 of the players who are sort of not in even Europa League at the moment? Can we look at maybe snatching some Leicester players? Can we, if we think we need creativity in that midfield, can we lure a James Maddison away? Can we even get a Yuri Tillemans if we want him in central midfield? I think Leicester have a lot of good players who might be ripe for the picking after their disappointing season. We might touch on them later as well, but they might be one to pick off, because now you'd sort of think that Newcastle are swimming in their league. Can we go and get a Mark Gay from Crystal Palace because we're swimming in their league? Can we weaken them and make ourselves better and push to be the best of the rest and maybe, like you say, pushing for Europa League next season? The other thing is, I'm not sure if Arsenal are going to be pushing this hard for top four next season, and it's huge what happens in the transfer window now. But their options have been greatly reduced, and if you think, I mean, there's been a lot of talk of Gabriel Jesus, who I think would be a fantastic signing. Now we look at it. Does Gabriel Jesus want to go to Arsenal with no Champions League football? Who can they attract in the summer now? And obviously you've got just this sour feeling that they may be going into the summer with. Obviously, as I keep saying, it could change. There's still another game left, but it will be a bitter pill to swallow to go into this summer, and it might just ward off players who might have been thinking to go there otherwise, even with the obvious of not having Champions League football. So it's a massive swing that has potentially happened here. I'm wondering on your thoughts on, obviously, mainly the Arsenal transfer policy. What you think you might see this summer should they stay in fifth place?
Well, you're probably going to see something similar to what we saw this summer that just went by, where we didn't necessarily break the bank. We did sort of, you can say that we sort of weakened Brighton by taking Ben White from them. And then we signed players, like young players that have potential without necessarily breaking the bank. We didn't sign any sort of marquee player. Had we gotten into the Champions League, it would have allowed us to then sign 2, potentially 3 marquee players. And I guess Jesus might be considered a marquee player, considering he's coming from City and he's a title winner and so on. But yeah, it's I think they have a recruitment policy set in place of signing sort of young and up and coming talent, but we don't necessarily need young and up and coming talent. We need some experienced players to come in alongside that young and up and coming talent. But
you got any names?
Well, I would have liked Yuri Tielemans to come in. I think he would be a great addition into the midfield. Guimaraes would have been good if they actually got him. Patrick Schick up front, I've mentioned him before. I'd like to see him come in. No other players really come. Like, I'm sure there's players out there that would suit. I guess Arsenal in the system, like from other leagues, maybe from Germany, for instance. But I think now, like after showing what happens to the team when you have a couple of injuries, so like we lost Tierney, and like he's been sort of like half and half. So like when he's played, he's been great, and he's shown why. At least a couple of years ago, he's shown why he was picked ahead of Robertson for left back for Scotland. But those injuries have really set him back. Like he's like, and that just goes to show, like, Robinson's been fit, had like no injuries for the last 3-4 seasons, and Tierney's been playing like half seasons, if that. I think even 2 seasons ago he played like 2 or 3 games. Like he was out for like the whole season. So that's the difference. And like those two were like considered equals at one point in time 2 or 3 years ago. So we need, and Tavares last night showed, and I think this goes to show what we spoke about last week or the week before. If Martinelli plays on the left and you play Tavares on the left, they can't play alongside each other because they both want to stay high and wide, or like Tavares wants to bomb from a very wide position. He wants to bomb on. And that doesn't suit Martinelli, and we saw that last night where Martinelli had to play sort of in that channel between the left wing and the number 9 that would allow Tavares the space to run forward, and that's why Smith Rowe was picked ahead of Martinelli, because Tavares was going to come in on the left. So Arteta probably sees what I've seen with in relation to that, them not being compatible. So we probably need to bring in another left back that's of a similar ilk to Tierney. We need to bring in another right back that's a better replacement for Tomiyasu if Tomiyasu is going to keep on having these ongoing calf issues. We need to bring in a number 9, whether that's Jesus or Patrick Schick or someone else. I think we also need to bring in another centre back. I know we have Saliba that's like our player and we can bring him back and he's done really well at Marseille. But in case Arteta still doesn't have him in his plans, because I think he's only 20, we need to bring in another centre back as well. And we need to bring in 2 midfielders as well, in case, because Partey as well has had his injury problems. So we need about 6 or 7 signings to as I guess as like 2 or 3 of them need to be like actual first team players, like in the starting 11, and the rest of them need to be like on the fringes of challenging for the starting 11, like actually causing headaches in relation to who do you want to pick, rather than oh crap, Tomiyasu's injured, I guess we need to put Cedric in. Oh, Tierney's injured, I guess we need to put Tavares in. But Tavares is young, so this is his first season, so I'll give him a pass, I guess, in terms of how he's playing and developing and that. But we've seen the imbalance when he plays and if Martinelli plays at the same time on the same wing as well.
I don't know, man. It sounds like a lot of work that needs to be done over the summer, and without Champions League and without Champions League money, who knows when the opportunity will be as good as it was this season. Who knows if that will be the case again next season with what we've said about Tottenham getting stronger, Chelsea getting strong. Well, Chelsea should, I think, overall get weaker this summer because they're losing a lot of key players. So that might be a saving grace. But obviously as well, Newcastle being stronger. So interesting summer ahead is all I can say with that, to see. And it'll be interesting to make our preseason picks. Who at the end of it, who I have finishing higher out of Newcastle and Arsenal. I still have the feeling it'll be Arsenal, but I think that gap will be significantly closed by Newcastle this summer if they keep recruiting that well. So you finished the point on...
Just before we...
Oh, yeah, go on.
I'm not sure if we're going to... I think we should be moving on to the other fixtures that happen, but just before we do move on, I'll end it on... Was it Harry Redknapp that said if Eddie Howe's name was Eduardo Suarez or Eduardo Silva, he'd be managing a top Premier League club? And I guess since coming into Newcastle, he's shown, I guess, a little bit of what he can do if given resources.
Yeah, we'll see. I think it's a collaborative effort. I think they have really good recruitment behind the scenes as well. But there's no doubt, I didn't, in my wildest dreams, I didn't think he'd do as good a job as he has so far. And mainly in getting the supporters united behind the team. I think that's the key thing with a club like that, like a Newcastle, like a Liverpool. You just feel it when that place is rocking and the whole city, well, the red half of the Merseyside anyway, but the whole city's behind a club that means so much to the people. I really think that counts for a lot in football, and generating that kind of momentum counts for a hell of a lot. So to resonate with the people, this team, and him being a major part of that, obviously, you got to give him a lot of credit. Be interesting to see when he has to deal in the finer margins of trying to get into A, Europa League, and then B, Champions League. That's when he'll really be put to the test. Let's see if he can rise to that next level. I'm still not convinced, but we will see in the near future, because I think Newcastle's project is close and it's interesting. But before you brought up that, I guess you've got to finish on Nuno Tavares. So the segue here would be from one replacement left back to another. The Greek Scouser, Kostas Tsimikas, comes up with the decisive penalty in the shootout to hand Liverpool their second piece of silverware in another penalty shootout against Chelsea at Wembley. And yeah, I mean, we both watched this game. I'm interested to get your thoughts on what you saw or your big picture takeaway from from what happened at Wembley on that Saturday afternoon?
The first thing that comes to mind is Liverpool won, but at what cost? Because Fabinho went off in the previous game that they played, not in this game. Yeah. But you had Salah coming off, and Van Dijk as well was taken off as probably a precaution. But I think I heard that there's some question marks there. But Salah coming off after 30 minutes, that could be a concern. Well, I can't remember if there was another player that that came off in regards to injury or not. Because I don't think Robertson came off just because of injury. I think it was just because he played a lot of football. And Tsimikas is a pretty good backup. Overall, how the game went, I guess it shows... I'm trying to pick my words here. It shows how close Chelsea are to City and Liverpool, but also I guess how far they are as well from a certain perspective, because they can challenge both of them, because they lost to City both times 1-0, I think. They haven't beaten or lost to Liverpool in the what was it? So like the 420 minutes or 440 minutes of football that they've played. They've lost on penalties both times this season. So Liverpool haven't been able to beat them in actual football regulation time. So it shows how close they are, but they can't beat the other teams below them. That's where they've dropped points. And that might be because of possibly squad depth, because they had a couple of injuries, and they also went away to going away to the Club World Cup. I think that really stopped their momentum as well, even though they were starting to show some fragilities just before going there. I think they were starting to drop some games around that Christmas period. The game was, I don't know, from a neutral's perspective, it was okay to watch, but at the same time, probably a little bit boring. Like there was some chances, but you want to see goals as well as a neutral. And all in all, I can't necessarily say that either team really deserved to win, because they both had their chances. Like you'd probably have to, like from just going off of memory, I think you guys hit the post twice. Can't remember if you had any like other clear-cut chances that Mendy ended up saving. I think Chelsea as well had 2 or 3 pretty clear-cut chances that were saved. I think was it Pulisic or Alonso that had like sort of like a one-on-one that Alisson saved. Cazorla threw on goal. But overall, I think the chances were pretty even in how they went. And you know what else was telling? How out of form Kante is. Because when it seemed like they were starting to get some control in the second half, Chelsea. And then when Kovacic was taken off and Kante was brought on, Liverpool regained control. I noticed that as well as something that's very telling. So hopefully for next season, if Kante ends up staying, he ends up finding some form as well. Otherwise, yeah, it's a shame for such a nice personality in football. Like you always see him smiling, and you always hear these good feel good stories about him. Like seeing him out of form is, it's a little bit sad, I suppose, from a neutral's perspective, but. Overall, well done, Liverpool. Still on track for that quaddie, but at the end of the day, when it comes down to penalties, it's who has the nerves of steel. And I'll just touch on this before I hand it off to you. When Mendy pulled off that save for the penalty, and then the Chelsea players threw the flare, I was just thinking, oh man, this is gonna ruin the concentration. I think Ziyech was taking it. I'm just like, this is gonna ruin his concentration, and he's probably gonna miss now. So after pulling off a save to get you back into it, you're potentially throwing off the concentration of your own player who's going up next, which is just stupid. and also it's the Chelsea captain's curse, where in a penalty shootout you hit the the right side of the standing upright as well.
John Terry pen.
I
didn't think of that.
Yeah, I know he didn't. I know he didn't slip, but he hit it. He was pretty much like the same penalty. Like it hit the same spot, I think, or like around the same height. So that was a good throwback that I sort of picked up on. But yeah, overall, well done to Liverpool.
Yeah. So, firstly, on the Kante point, because I think you're right, and he's not in top form at the moment, and probably going into next season, he's probably only Chelsea's only truly world class player, you'd say. But so you notice how it changed up when he came on. I think you could put a lot of that down to his form, in particular, probably compared to Kovacic, who I think's been fantastic this season. But as well, we've seen this in games involving Liverpool this season where a team comes out really strong in the second half. They can't sustain it, and then Liverpool get on top in the later stages, which is pretty much exactly what happened in this game. The way I saw it was, I thought Liverpool maybe just shaded it, especially in the 90 minutes. I thought they definitely deserved to win in the 90 minutes. It wasn't. It's maybe definitely is a bit strong, but I thought they did with, like you say, those two hit the post. I know Chelsea hit the crossbar, and Chelsea had good chances throughout the game, much like the League Cup game, where I thought Chelsea probably deserved to win that one. But Liverpool's first 25 minutes was really, really good, and Klopp went out of his way to talk about how good he thought we were in those 25 minutes, and I thought we really were. And he said it was the best we played against Chelsea this season. It definitely was, because in a lot of those other games, I think in the game at Anfield in the league, Chelsea probably shaded and deserved to win. I thought Stamford Bridge at 2-2 was fair, and I thought, like I just said, the League Cup, Chelsea. If you were going to give it to anyone, it was probably Chelsea. So it was nice to actually be on top for a period like that, but we didn't get our reward. And Chelsea actually produced a few good chances in that first half. We had a couple of good chances, the Diaz 1-on-1 and the Jota one over the bar right at the end. So I thought first half was pretty even if you're going to go on chances. That first 15 minutes of the second half, I thought, was as dominant. Chelsea were as dominant as we were in that first 25 minutes of the game. But then I thought towards the end of the game, Liverpool came on really strong. And for me, that spoke to the fact that Liverpool really did not want to play extra time in this game. That sort of gung-ho, go for the win. I know Liverpool like to do that, but for me, that spoke much more to the fact that they were prioritising probably not the league anymore, but definitely the Champions League. Klopp sees it the same way I see it in terms of that's the one you want to win. It would be interesting to see if we were still in with a really good chance in the Premier League, what kind of prioritisation would take place closer to the Champions League final, but that one looks just about gone, and I conceded it last pod. So, and that the fact that Van Dijk comes off after 90 minutes and Salah comes off after 30. Klopp after the game said he thinks they'll be fine. He obviously said he doesn't think they'll be fine for Tuesday, which I expect to see a reserve team on Tuesday against Southampton, or tonight for you, tomorrow morning for us. But yeah, that definitely, I think they'll be fine. Fabinho's the one who's a little bit of a worry for the Champions League final. We'll see if he can get back in time, because I think that one is a proper injury. But these Van Dijk and Salah ones seemed very precautionary. They were very much, oh, you felt like the tiniest twinge, well, we're going to take you off, because there's no way you're going into the Champions League final like that. We need that's the one that we really want to win. So I think if you offered Klopp, I don't know, obviously if you offered him a loss in the FA Cup final to win the Champions League, he'd probably take it as that trade-off. So, and I think that's telling in the changes that were made. For Chelsea, and you pretty much said exactly what Thomas Tuchel said after the game, where he looked at the games in isolation between Liverpool and Chelsea this season, and he said that illustrates in the one-off games how close we are to them, that we can play on that level, and I don't think that was ever in doubt. Chelsea played a good game in this game after those 25 minutes. After those 25 minutes, the fullbacks became pivotal for Chelsea, and they were finding them quite regularly when that Liverpool press dropped off. And Liverpool tend to give a lot of space away in those areas. And with Chelsea's system, with their wider players already occupying the Liverpool fullbacks, then all of a sudden your players and he picked good players to play in there in Marcos Alonso and Reece James, who were two of the better ball playing wing backs or fullbacks in the world. So to be given that kind of space with those kinds of players on the ball, I thought really played into why Chelsea became more and more of a threat in that match and in that first half in particular. So, but we knew in the games, we knew Chelsea have weapons that give Liverpool problems. We do Liverpool have weapons that give Chelsea problems. We knew the games would be even, but then he also went on to say, like your point about how close they are, but not close they are. He also said, but this is Liverpool, and he mentioned underdogs a lot going into the game, and even after the game, we were the underdogs. Which I don't know how much of an underdog they were. It's still Chelsea. They still spent a lot on that squad, and for most of the season, I was still calling them the third best team in Europe, and I think a lot of people would have them around there. So I don't know how much I believe the underdog, but he also said they showed why they are. They've showed this season why they are where they are in the league and why they're so many points ahead, because they do it consistently, and that's the mark of a great team. And that's definitely what's played out this season. And if you want to look at football karma, you could probably say Liverpool probably deserved the trophy just based on that they are the better team throughout a whole season. I know this is a cup competition, so in terms of the better team winning, it rarely works out like that in one-off cup competitions. But if you want to point to that maybe Liverpool put enough credit in the bank for that to happen, because penalty shootouts are just a lottery. I think, there's little things that Klopp was talking about, how they had a consultancy in to psychoanalyze. I don't know if it was probably their players and the opposition and get them in the right frame of mind for penalties. Look, if that gives you the decimal point of a percentage that's needed in these situations, then absolutely look for those advantages. And now they've won 2 shootouts against Chelsea, which, for my heart's sake, I hope we don't have to go into another one against Real Madrid. But it's definitely a possibility with 2 teams seemingly as evenly matched as that for the Champions League final, which I'm sure we'll talk more about next week. But yeah, I thought going to penalties was probably fair. Liverpool winning was probably fair as well for me, but you never know in those situations. And Chelsea, this was the last time we'll see Chelsea as presently constructed, because that whole defense is going to get a revamp. Well, in terms of in a big game, I know we have 2 more Premier League games, but they're already secured in top 4. The manager staying will be a big one. I know I've got my theory on what I think might happen, but it's based on no real facts, so we'll see. We'll watch that space over the summer. But one thing is for sure, Chelsea need to get new centre-backs in that position, because they're losing a lot. 3 of their most senior centre-backs, only really Thiago Silva is staying. And you saw the trouble that Trevor Chalobah had up against Luis Diaz in the first 25 minutes. Liverpool clearly made it a tactic to go after him. So I don't know if he's the answer, especially when we're talking about big games next season. I wanted to get your thoughts on this, because obviously this is a player you would have watched a lot for the national team. But the strong rumor is Ivan Perisic is signing a new contract at Inter, and it looks like he's on his way to Chelsea next season. That's what a lot of the rumors are. So, first of all, do you think that's a good signing for Chelsea? And obviously, I think we agree on this, but it's not really the position that Chelsea need, is it?
It's a tough one, because I think he's 32, and I'm just not the biggest fan of. Oh, he's 33. Yeah, I'm just not the biggest fan of signing like players that are sort of like towards the end of their career, and I guess that's it depends. Is he going on a free, or is that what you said?
Yeah, I believe it's a free.
If it's a free, I'm okay with that because whereas if they were trying to sign him for like 40 or 50 mil or 30 mil, considering he's 33, he maybe has like 2 more years left before he retires. Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan, even though he's not, for instance, coming to a team that I support. I'm still not the biggest fan of that because I'm just not sure how you're signing someone towards the tail end of their career. In terms of the player himself, he should have been in the Premier League. I think it was 3 or 4 seasons ago when Mourinho wanted to sign him for United because he's definitely suited for the Premier League in terms of his the physicality that he brings and the energy that he brings. But Chelsea's forward line is mostly it's mostly younger players. Like you got Pulisic there, you got Ziyech, you got who's I guess he's in his mid-20s. You got Mount there as well. Who else is there that plays in the forward line?
Werner, Havertz.
Yeah,
they can both play out wide when needed.
So, is he going to be taking time away from these young players as well? I would have been more for this a couple of years ago, but it's definitely not a bad signing, especially if it's going to be on a free. But yeah, I'm just not 100% convinced by it. But yeah, I
think the point you're kind of missing a little bit is I don't think he'll play in the front three. He'll play as one of the wing backs if he does come to Chelsea. And in terms of wing backs in world football, he is, for me, right up there because he is. And you're not wrong to think he would maybe play in the front three because, for all intents and purposes, for a lot of his career, he has been a player who plays on the wing. But at Inter, he plays as the left wing back, and I think it's the perfect position for him because in his early days at Dortmund, when he was coming through, I was never particularly impressed with him as a winger. But he's that kind of he's that kind of winger where he's not a modern day front three winger for me. A modern day front three winger has to play on the inside channels a little bit more than he does. I think he's the more traditional winger. And what we're seeing with more traditional wingers now, they become wing backs as long as they play in front of the centre back who has more fullback tendencies, like an Azpilicueta, who is obviously a former right or left back who plays as the wide centre back. I think it's important to get that balance right if you want a traditional winger playing as a wing back. I think he's a good signing, but for me, he's not what they need. They need a centre back. So whether that means they'll look at using Reece James as more of a right-sided centre-back, who I think is fantastic in that position, but I think he wants to do more than that. He doesn't want to be shackled as much as that. I think he wants to play more, at least as a wing-back, if not one day maybe come inside and play more central midfield as well. So it'll be interesting to see what develops there. I know there's been a lot of rumours about him and Real Madrid. So fascinating to see if that's a contingency thing because they believe that Reece James will go. Obviously, we're expecting Ben Chilwell back in the side next season as well. So, but it's also a contingency thing because they expect, I think, Alonso to leave for Barcelona as well. So, it's an interesting signing. It's a good signing, like you say, because it's on a free, and because for me he's still in that particular role one of the best wing backs in the world. And a little shout out because we spoke about Kevin De Bruyne and his two-footedness. Ivan Perisic is right up on that list in terms of being two-footed. He's fantastic off both sides of his body. And I was reading an article. Give me spoils, one of those clickbait ones, but I had to read it after we were talking about De Bruyne and his two-footedness. The one that we really missed out on, and it's because we don't watch him anymore, but in terms of historically great two-footed players, Santi Cazorla was fantastic off both feet. And it was sort of that point that we made about De Bruyne. He could do everything with both feet. It wasn't just striking a ball, but he could just look just as composed, dribbling and taking a first touch with his left foot as his right foot. And, he's one who's up on that list. Son as well, who I guess we'll touch on when we talk about Tottenham. He's another one, but yeah, it's an interesting side, but it's definitely centre back where I feel, and it's no. I'm not breaking ground by saying that. They're going to need reinforcements there. And I think they need Tuchel to stay, because if Tuchel goes and they don't get an adequate replacement, and there's not many adequate replacements for a manager of Thomas Tuchel's level. So I'm still really fascinated to see what happens with Chelsea this summer. But I guess on the flip side, in terms of another point I wanted to hit on in terms of Liverpool and winning this trophy, obviously it's fantastic to now have 2 of the 4 that were available. The major trophies go at the start of the season, but they are the least important, I guess you could say, of the 4. But at least the FA Cup is a major trophy. Like, they call the League Cup a major trophy, but it's a little bit Mickey Mouse. It's played in February, and up until probably the semi-finals, you play reserve teams if you're a bigger club. So how much does it really mean? It's nice to have, but it's not a be all and end all trophy. The FA Cup's a bit closer; it's getting there. But yeah, in terms of that, I think it was really important that Liverpool won this trophy, because to be effectively out of the Premier League race now, I know there's still a little bit of hope, but effectively can't see City slipping up enough to lose it. To go into the Champions League final having not won the FA Cup, having not won the Premier League, I just think there's a potential where you see, and I know Liverpool are, and the term has come back after the FA Cup win, the mentality monsters, which I agree with and disagree with at certain points with this Liverpool team. I still don't think that this, in terms of the mentality, is as good as that 18-19 team that won the Champions League and came so close in the league, because I think that team was a little bit more disciplined, had a better defense, I think, in terms of filling you with confidence. I know this team has a great defense in terms of record, but they do give away a lot of chances, as we see, and they were good chances that Chelsea were getting. That Pulisic one in the first half was a really good chance. Alonso, it was a good chance, but like we say with Alisson, he's so good in those situations, and he was just fantastic again in that situation, and obviously in the shootout to make the crucial save off Mount. But for that fact, going into the Champions League without having these doubts really creep into your head, what if we finish with none of the major trophies at the end of the season? I think it was a really important psychological effect that this should have on Liverpool going in to that Champions League final. So I don't know if you have anything to add on terms of what this means for Liverpool, more than just having the trophy of the FA Cup.
It's like what you said, like having already wrapped up 2 trophies and having them, I guess, in the bank, they can probably play a little bit more freely and with a little bit less nerves. But just because of that, regardless of whether they win the league title or not, they still won't go down as an unsuccessful season or a trophyless season. And someone I saw that someone even mentioned that to Tuchel. They're like, what do you think of Chelsea's trophyless season? And I think he's like, what do you mean trophyless? Like, we won the UEFA Super Cup and the Club World Cup as well. So, but there you go. That's just an example of how two trophies are actually being diminished by the press, I suppose, or by potentially even the general public. FA Cup won't. But most people probably rate the FA Cup higher than like the UEFA Super Cup, for instance, because it's, I guess, a more historical trophy, and yeah, it's probably, or it's either on par or maybe even just above, some would say. But yeah, it definitely helps that they have that in the bank. The only concern that I have going into, I guess, the Champions League final is what happened, like we touched on in regards to the injuries. Like Fabinho that's a serious one. I'm not. You said that Salah was a precautionary one. It seemed like he was asking for the sub rather than like I don't think Van Dijk was asking for the sub. Like, but Salah actually asked for the sub. He's like, I feel something, like take me off. So that one might be a little bit more worrying than the Van Dijk one. But yeah, that's considering the La Liga's all wrapped up, and yeah, Liverpool have had to play the FA Cup, so that's an extra game that they've had to play this season, the FA Cup final, and then they also have a game tonight and then a game on Sunday. Whereas I think La Liga's already, is that done? Have they played their 38 games?
I think they have.
Yeah, but even so, like the league's wrapped up, so Real are going to rest players. They're not going to really risk injuries. Whereas since Liverpool's still technically playing for the league, it's going to be interesting who comes in fresher and who comes in with less injuries. And and my other point was going to be, with alongside the injuries, was it's so telling how much these two teams give in terms of City and Liverpool, because City have had players going down injured as well in these last 2 or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Like they've lost Walker, they've lost Stones. I think they lost Laporte over the weekend, or was it Diaz that they lost? Because Fernandinho's been filling in at centre back now as well. So
It's Diaz.
Yeah,
Diaz, I think, is gone for the rest of the season.
Yeah, so like they've had players starting to drop like flies, and even Liverpool now have started to have a couple of players drop off as well because of how strenuous this title run has become for them, or how the season as a whole has become of them. Whereas you don't really see that I can't really see that happening in La Liga and the Bundesliga and even Serie A as well, because they have like that 2 to 4 week break around January. So that break probably ends up rejuvenating the team. And can you sort of touch on remember or give an example of whether you've seen that happening in La Liga and in the other leagues, or is that more of a Premier League thing? And is that then down to the no break over Christmas and New Year's?
I think it probably has an impact, and it's a good point you raise. I'm not sure if, and I don't know the statistics, but I'm not sure if it's a massive difference in terms of traditionally Premier League versus other leagues, but I do think that winter break does give a little bit of advantage coming down the stretch to the teams on the continent. But at the same time, this Liverpool team have always kind of had that problem since Klopp's been in charge because of the intensity they play at, but the squad is very deep now, where you could say, I know we're talking about fine margins at a Champions League final, but in terms of huge effects on the team, I can really only say losing Alisson would be a huge effect, even though Kelleher does a fantastic job when he comes in, to be fair to him. He had to play at Stamford Bridge in the league game earlier this season. He was really good. I think, obviously, there's players who have a little effect, but I think it's really only Alisson, Van Dijk, and probably still Salah. Although Salah in recent weeks, I don't know, because we've got so much depth in those positions, how big an effect is it? I think Alisson and Van Dijk come before Salah in terms of the drop-off to their replacements. Fabinho is sort of touch and go at that position, but I've been really impressed with Henderson, the way he's played in that number 6 role since he's come in. And honestly, in some games, Henderson might even be a better choice than Fabinho for the mobility that he gives. I don't think he'll be a better choice than Fabinho for the Champions League final coming up. And I think that'll be a topic to touch on more in next week when we get to the build-up to the final. But yeah, that's an interesting point you raise. I think it would be interesting to see as well, given how old the Real team, if they still had a title challenge in La Liga and had to go down to match day 38, it would be interesting to see what effect that would have on the older legs that they have there. So I think we'll touch on it more at another pod, but that I think that rest versus rhythm discussion will be pretty prevalent in the build up to the Champions League final. But yeah, that's an interesting point that you brought up there, and I don't know if you had any other points about Liverpool or Chelsea and the FA Cup in general. Just before you go on, in terms of that Chelsea trophyless comment, one thing obviously it's a little bit lazy journalism to say that because they have won 2 trophies and you shouldn't discount those trophies, because I think I would put the FA Cup just a little bit higher than the Super Cup, but not much. The Super Cup, I would still, if I was in that competition, I'd want to win it because you've earned that right to be playing for that trophy. So Chelsea, hats off to them for winning that. And the Club World Cup I would put as important as the FA Cup. And I think I've said it before on a pod, but being able to call yourself the best club in the world and have it actually backed up by the fact that you've won a trophy that says that, and now you can put that gold badge on your kit as well. I think that should mean something, and it really annoys me how the Premier League doesn't let their teams wear that badge for their Premier League games. That really gives me the shits. Actually, it shouldn't happen. They should be. If you're the champion club of the world, you should be able to proudly display that with the badge that you earned from that. So. I put that at least as high as the FA Cup, if not maybe a little bit higher. So yeah, that's a little bit lazy, and that's my ranking of trophies, I guess, with obviously Premier League second and Champions League first.
Yeah, one thing that I just wanted to touch on. One is with the. It sort of ties into Luis Diaz. There's like 2 points that I have with him. Firstly, you guys must be thanking your lucky stars that you were forced to buy him in January, as opposed to your original plan of buying him in summer. And you guys need to be thanking Tottenham, I guess, for that, because they were trying to sign him now in January. So it's pretty interesting how they sort of forced your hand to come in early, and he's been an absolute revelation since coming in. Like, I'm trying to think. Like if we're going off of signings of the year, it probably for like before Luis Diaz, even before Gemara's as well, because he's turned things around at Newcastle. And I guess before the capitulation of Arsenal, I might have given it to Ramsdale, because he came in with so much, I guess, questions, like, because I think he just got relegated, and that you're paying 35 mil for him and all this stuff. So like, and he proved everyone wrong. So like, he might have gotten signing of the season for me. I'm trying to think of anyone else that was as good or had a bigger impact, but I think Luis Diaz might end up taking signing of the season for me. And yeah, you guys have Tottenham to thank. My second point on that is, it was bloody annoying that they played at that what was it, like a 340? Yeah, because like Liverpool were forcing, like they kept like you mentioned it, where they noticed Chalobah as, I guess, a weakness, and I guess that also, not just that he's a weakness, but also that Luis Diaz is a strength as well. So like it's sort of like that Son argument where Son is a strength, but also Arsenal's right hand side is a weakness if Cedric plays there. So Son is going to have an absolute field day. So like, not only is Luis Diaz a massive strength for you guys, but Chalobah was obviously a weakness on that right hand side. And there was like a couple of times where like he was played into that sunny area on that left hand side, and like you couldn't see him picking up the ball and stuff. So that was really annoying that they had the kickoff at that time. I'm not sure how to necessarily avoid that, because like you were coming into this spring summertime, so like any early kickoff, maybe they need to kick off at like exactly 12 or 1 o'clock for the sun to, I guess, be right above the stadium. But they kicked off at, I think it was like 4:45 or 5:45. so the sun had already starting, like it was already, I guess, on its descent. So it's always going to make that sort of shadow across the stadium. So that was absolutely annoying as a spectator. Also, I just want to get your thoughts on. I heard them discussing this on TalkSport, where they mentioned that it was, and I guess it's because of COVID. And I think, did they start the season late? Like this season because of COVID as a carry on from last season, or was it because of the European, the Euros that they started late? But I think because of that, the FA Cup's always at the very last game of the season. Obviously, before the Champions League, but after the league has ended. Do you think it sort of took away from, I guess, the spectacle or the tradition of the FA Cup, having it in match week 37? So like when the very next day you're still having league games being played, and the FA Cup isn't its own individual day, but rather just a sort of another game in a weekend of fixtures. Do you think that sort of took away from, I guess, the specialty of it? Or maybe you don't feel it, or maybe I don't feel it because we're not actually living in England, so maybe it's a slightly different, because we're spectating obviously over the TV. So do you have any thoughts on that as well, that they moved it away from, at least I think only for this season, away from the last fixture of the calendar?
I think it's not entirely new. I think in recent seasons we have had FA Cup finals that aren't at the end of the season. They've come around this time with 1 or 2 games left.
I can't remember the last time it's happened. It's always been at the very end. It's always been the last fixture.
Maybe we'd have to do research on that, but for me, it's felt like in the last couple of years we've had these FA Cups where they haven't actually been the last game of the season. But we'd have to look into it. But in terms of that, I think it should always be at the end of the season. The league should all be done, and this should be the showcase event in terms of one-off trophy finals. For it to come in the middle of the season, we've talked about it, and I always hark back to it, the European Super League idea. I don't like that you can play for a trophy and then have sort of it come in the middle of you having to play league games. I just think that's a little distracting. It'd be nice to have more build-up and more pressure put on these events while they already have so much, particularly pressure because it's a trophy. But the build-up could be more, because we had while they didn't want to play Premier League games on the same day as the FA Cup final, they had the full slate of fixtures the very next day, so you can kind of get lost in that jumble. And then obviously Liverpool have to play on Tuesday night against Southampton after winning an FA Cup. So yeah, I totally agree that it should be its own event at the end of the season. Obviously this season Liverpool wouldn't really get to celebrate it because they'd have a Champions League final still coming up, but just in general, it should be at the end of the full league season.
All right, I'm glad we agree on that. And the Luis Diaz comment.
Yeah, well, I would have thanked them if they didn't take 2 points off us at Anfield. So for that, they don't get the thanks. And it's good that Luis Diaz came back to bite them in the arse and score the equaliser. So in terms of thanking Tottenham, you're not getting it out of me.
Yeah, well, if you guys had done your job against Tottenham, then maybe we wouldn't have lost to them as well. Like, it had that carry-on effect, so screw you guys as well.
I guess that's the perfect way to sort of just touch on what we saw in the league a little bit before maybe we go into something else, or maybe we wrap up. I don't know. City. Did that first half raise some eyebrows at the London Stadium for you?
Yeah, I was just thinking, what the hell's happened? But that just goes to show we touched on the injuries, and yeah, the defense just wasn't solid really, and it makes sense. You're missing a lot, like half of your defense pretty much, and you show. You open up space and you allow players through. I think Zinchenko was I think both times Zinchenko played Bowen onside, if I'm not mistaken, or at least the second time I think he did. The other time it might have actually been Laporte that played him onside, but he came from Zinchenko's side, so yeah, like them going down 2-0 in the first half. Like, you must have been an ecstatic little kid on Christmas morning.
Not quite. I knew that was a full game, and I knew they were still. I knew even if they lost, they were still in the driver's
position. You know what?
So I couldn't quite get to that point.
Yeah, but you know what else the commentator was mentioning? He said that, we've touched on it, where like the teams are so close in terms of goals for, goals against, goal difference. He said that it could come down to an actual one-off game at the end of the season if City end up losing this, because I think the criteria for that is equal points, and then they go down to goal difference. So if goal difference is equal, then they look at whether goals for and goals whether goals for is higher. If that's equal, then they go down to the actual individual games that they had throughout the season, which both teams, they drew 2-2, both of them. So away goals has no impact. And then if all of that is equal, which it could have been, except for the slight goal difference, but that could have come down to the final game, they would have had to play a one-off game. Like, and I think if I just bring up the table, going into this game, so the goal difference was so you guys are on 65, City are on 72 in goal difference. So that's what, seven goals. But like, if you guys score 3 against Southampton, that closes it to 4. But then like your goals for, it's 96, 89. Goals against is 24. Like, it's insane. Like, it's actually so close between you guys, and it could have come down to that one-off game at the end of the season. I think that would have been the first time in history that it comes down to that, and I actually thought that would have been really, really fitting for this season, if it came down to a one-off game to decide the season. So like a match week 39 just for those two.
Yeah, and then Liverpool have literally played every game available to them, because that would just be ridiculous. And that would, the word you use, fitting, is perfect for that scenario, because there really isn't much to choose between these teams. Depending on who you ask, one person might have City as the best team in the world, another one might have Liverpool in the best team in the world. Some contrarians might want to put Real Madrid as the best team in the world, and I guess they have a case, but I still wouldn't go that far. I still think the best stuff we've seen has been from Liverpool and City on a consistent basis. So fitting is a perfect word that you use, if that was to go to a tie like that. Yeah.
And you know what, I'll just touch on, like, before I let you go on your thought train as well, I just want to touch on the penalty as well. Like, when I saw Mahrez stepping up to it, two thoughts crossed my mind. Firstly, and I don't know if it's just me, but for some reason I don't trust left-footed penalty takers. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is, but like, I've seen Messi miss heaps. I've seen Mahrez, and that like obviously goes into my second point. Like, Mahrez has missed a couple of important penalties for City from what I've seen. And seeing him step up to take it, I said to myself out loud, I don't feel good about this. I don't think it will end well. Like, I don't like it. And lo and behold, he put it at a perfect height for the keeper to score, like for the keeper to save it. Technically, the keeper scored. I guess you can count that as a point for the keeper. But like, he put at that perfect sort of height, like middle of the goal, like, and not quite in the corner either, like sort of literally middle of the goal height and middle of the halfway to post distance, like perfect for the keeper to save. And I just don't trust left-footed penalty takers. Like, I think I've seen Griezmann miss a couple as well. And And yeah, like I was just thinking, why isn't De Bruyne taking this? Like I'd trust him much more in this big moment. And look, like obviously we don't know how it would have gone, but like had De Bruyne have taken it, I think he would have scored it, and the title would have essentially been wrapped up because you guys would have needed 8 goals in your final 2 games, and that's if City end up like losing 1-0 or 2-0. Like you would have needed a big result from Aston Villa, but also big results from you guys as well in your final 2 games to close that goal difference. But yeah, they sort of missed a chance to not necessarily mathematically clinch the title, but to like pretty much to close the door but not lock the door. I think that's the best way to put it.
As good as lock the door with 7 goals difference. They'd have to. Well, we could give Southampton one of their trademark hidings, although I don't think they'll. I'm kind of nervous we won't even win the game against Southampton because I think we'll make a lot of changes. I think Klopp has all but conceded the Premier League as well, and it might have made his job a little bit easier, in fact, if City won on the weekend, because now he needs to at least put the appearance out that we want to win that game. And I do want to win that game. Like I've said, I'm big on records and stuff like that. So to finish not winning the title, but to finish at 92 points and be the second most points tally of a runner-up ever would be, I don't know, a little feather in the cap. It's not a full consolation, but it's something. And you always, as a big club, you always want to win the games you play in, no matter how seemingly meaningless they are. On the Mahrez penalty, at least he actually hit the target with this one, because the one that instantly comes to mind is 18-19 at Anfield, blazing over the bar in that 1-point season. If things go a little bit different at the Etihad, maybe we look at that penalty as a real turning point, but alas, they held on to the title. So at least you put this one on target. But I agree with you, maybe not on the left footers, but I agree with the Mahrez one. I don't. And if De Bruyne is on the pitch, I think you've got to give it to De Bruyne. For some reason, he doesn't normally take the penalties, and I don't understand that with the way he strikes a football. Obviously, if we want to talk about penalty misses, we can look at De Bruyne last season missing that penalty against Liverpool when Liverpool went to the Etihad, and I think when Liverpool went to the Etihad last season, they were still in a position to still be challenging for the league. So that could have been more crucial than it was. But in the end, Liverpool fell away badly, obviously, with their problems.
But you know,
I don't know.
I just want
go on.
It would be so fitting if Gerrard made up for that slip as well on the final day of the season.
Yeah, and that's the thing I wanted to touch on. It's not. I don't know how much a draw changes what could happen. It needed. Obviously, City couldn't win this. If City won it, they pretty much won the league. Like, as close to mathematically won the league as you could be. But the fact that they've drawn it, I don't think Liverpool are going to make up the goal difference anyway, unless West Ham maybe went on and scored a third goal. Then it becomes a little bit more possible that Liverpool could give Southampton a bit of a beating, and all of a sudden goal difference is neck and neck going into the last game of the season and becomes a shootout. But the fact that they didn't win the game, I think, is the most important thing, because now, pretty much as probably would have been the case going into the game, even if City lost, they need to drop points against Villa. And that's not impossible. It's very, very unlikely. And I guess it's really important, I think, that Liverpool put themselves in a position to capitalise on any slip. As unlikely as it may be, but it's not impossible. I think if City have to lose against Villa on the last day of the season at home, I think that's nigh on impossible. I just don't see that one happening in any way. You could play that match 100 times and they'd probably only lose 2 or 3 of them. But in terms of drawing it, I think you could play that match 100 times and City could draw maybe 10 to 15 of those games played at the Etihad 100 times against Villa. So now the chances become much more likely. So it really puts a lot of I just want Liverpool to be in a position that if anything stupid happens on the last day, that they can actually come away and win the trophy. So this game against Southampton, off the back of the FA Cup, with so many expected changes, I think while it's not massive, because I think the Champions League is still the priority, it's big, and I think we all want that jeopardy going into the last game of the season. So City have just cracked the door open a little. You mentioned all the injuries as well, so they have to go into such a crucial game against Villa at home with a makeshift back four. So there's still some intrigue, given if as long as Liverpool do their job against Southampton, there's still some intrigue on this last day of the season. But that will be interesting. I think that's as important as anything.
Yeah, this result is definitely. I feel like it's thrown a spanner in the works because had they have beaten West Ham, they could have actually afforded to lose to Villa, but now they can't even afford to draw, really, can they?
No. So, as long as Liverpool beat Southampton, they can't afford to draw.
Yeah, and then who do you guys have for the very last game of the season?
Wolves at home, who I think have really let go of the rope. Judging by that, I know they weren't terrible against City, but they were loose against City. The spaces between their defensive units were far too much. So if they come into that game at Anfield a bit like that, Liverpool should take care of it comfortably.
Yes, I think it just depends how Klopp, I guess, decides to approach this game because, this West Ham result definitely it gives him a sniff to clinch the title potentially.
Yeah, definitely. Let's hope there's that jeopardy going into this game of the season.
Yeah, like last week I would have said the quaddie was off, and now it sort of feels like it could be back on.
Well, when we talk at the end of the week again, and hopefully do our team of the year selections and whatnot, let's hope that we're talking about a Liverpool win after that Southampton game. I am certainly hoping so. So we'll have a clearer picture after this away game, Southampton down. I don't know if you had any thoughts on what we saw at the bottom of the table in terms of the relegation battles, because Leeds picked up an absolutely crucial last-minute point against Brighton at home, which now puts Burnley in all honesty, this weekend it could have gone a little bit better, but it couldn't have gone much better with City dropping points and Burnley getting pushed into the relegation zone. And look, you're not going to look, I don't know how I feel, but my footballing brain side of me, disregarding friends and whatnot, wants Tottenham to be in the Champions League because I think what they can build with Conte and Kane and Son is far more exciting than while I think Arsenal are a good team in patches, I just think I'm more attracted to star power and star names like that. So to be able to see them probably in the Champions League next season, barring any twists and turns, my footballing brain just prefers seeing that at the moment. So in terms of what happened this weekend, but the big one for me was obviously City dropping points, Liverpool winning the FA Cup, obviously, but for me, like I've said in the past, I'm quite happy to see Burnley in the bottom three, and I hope they stay there.
Yeah, with Leeds being such a big club and such a historic club, you don't necessarily want to see them going down. But it comes down to, I guess, Thursday as well, where Everton are going, and Everton are going to play Crystal Palace at home. And Aston Villa are playing Burnley. So that could essentially clinch or decide who's going down. Especially if Burnley can't pick up points at all. That's gonna wrap it up.
Do you know how Burnley have on the last day of the season? Because that will obviously be... Leeds don't have a midweek
Newcastle.
game. So. Yeah.
But Burnley are playing at home, though.
Yeah, exactly. Which helps them a lot.
And who do Leeds have? They have Brentford at home, so that could be that's a tough game because Brentford are playing they're playing okay.
Yeah, they're playing free football and they just beat Everton away. So
Yeah, although that might have been the doing of Everton, because didn't they get 2 red cards? Yeah.
yeah,
They
I
got
think
one
they
red
did.
card after 18 and then another red card in the 88th. So they're taking a page out of Leeds' book in terms of getting players sent off. So they're sort of shooting themselves in the foot from a certain perspective.
Yeah, so definitely watch this space in terms of the relegation battle in this coming weekend, and hopefully watch this space in terms of the title, and obviously, hopefully for you, Norwich can perform a miracle, a beat. Well, I don't know if it'll be a miracle. Tottenham aren't great. They've got the potential, if they're in the Champions League, to be pretty good next season, keeping hold of those big names. But as presently constructed, they're not fantastic. So I'm not ruling out a loss to Norwich, even though it's very unlikely. Just like I'm not ruling out City dropping points at home, even though it's very unlikely. I think those two things are about as likely as each other, to be fair. So definitely some intrigue going into this last day of the season, no doubt. I believe this would probably be a good place to sign off. Having said all that, not much to report from the continent. I'm sure we'll dissect a little bit of what we've seen in terms of other teams from Europe. Probably not next pod, because next pod we're hoping to do our team of the year selections, which will be a sort of extravaganza pod that I definitely can't wait for. I can't wait to be giving out selections for teams of the season. But yeah, I think we've hit everything that we saw over the weekend in terms. It was very English focused, but it's really where all the main stories came out from this week. Apart from, and we'll touch on this as well. Lewandowski reiterating his desire to leave Bayern will be a good topic to hit in a couple of pods time as well. But Nev, if you're happy with what we've said this pod, then I'm happy to sign off and say good morning to you, good night from here.
I'm happy with what we've covered, but I'm not happy with the results. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, of course, of course. We'll see if that can rectify the weekend. Wouldn't hold my breath, but you never know in that Europa League. So, guys, thanks for tuning in. Nev, it's been a pleasure to talk football with you again, and tune in for the next pod, which, like I've just previewed, should be a bit of an extravaganza. So, good night from Australia, good morning from Croatia, and tune in again for the next pod, guys. Thank you.